Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Raj Khera, and thank you for joining us for this Mindshare hosted event on product market fit. I have a great panel with me, and they're pretty funny people too. And what I love about them is that they take their jobs and their work seriously, but they don't take themselves seriously. Best combo, best way to live life, and I'm glad you're able to join us. So I have with me here today Sid Banerjee. Sid, last year sold his company Clarabridge to Qualtrics for $1.25 billion. Prior to that, he sold, Sid, what was it, Clara Vista that you sold for?
Claraview.
Claraview,
Yeah,
I'm
we
sorry,
sold that
my
to
mistake. Claraview.
a company called Teradata.
Okay,
Yeah.
for 25 million prior to that. He is now a chief strategy officer at Medallia. And Glen Hellman. Glen, a longtime friend of mine, Call Technologies. He built that and sold it for $92 million in cash, and has invested in several companies like Social Tables, which sold for over $100 million, quite a few other companies. Glen is a program manager at iCore, and one of his big things is teaching people how to get to product market fit. So I'm excited to have him here. And Grant Elliott has managed a $500 million portfolio, IP portfolio at AT&T, and then also launched his startup by raising $10 million in funding, and he sold that company last year. My name is Raj Khera, and for those of you who know me, I've built, or don't know me, I should say, I built a company called GovCon in the late 90s, sold that to a publicly traded company, and then built a company called MailerMailer, and did some other turnaround stuff, and I've started a brand new startup called MakeMEDIA. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. One quick note before we get started about housekeeping. So if you have any questions, please ask them through the chat. I believe we should be able to get everything answered. I think I'm going to get a feed here. This is the first time I'm using this product called Restream, which is broadcasting live. So we should be able to answer questions as you have them. I've got a whole list of questions to ask. Given the background that I just mentioned, one of the panelists had a question, and I'm going to start with that one, Glen Hellman, but I'm going to ask the question to Sid. Why are you guys still working?
You didn't tell me you were going to ask that question.
No, well, surprise question for you.
That's okay. So I've been an entrepreneur going back to the early 2000s. Loved building and starting things. When I finally ended up selling my company, Clarabridge, I actually sold it in 2021, just clarifying on the date there. But I worked for the acquirer for a few years and then ultimately quit to do a little bit of rewirement, which is what I call it. I wasn't sure it was retirement for most of last year. Had a great time, but I think I realized I like working. I like doing things. I like fixing things and building things. And the opportunity came around to do it one more time, and that led to me joining this company, Medallia, at the beginning of this year. I think I'm just a glutton for punishment, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because a lot of us just enjoy the work, and I think that's a big part of the whole piece. Anybody else have something to add to that, Glenn or Grant? Why are you guys still working?
So I'm still working because I have to. I mean, I even if I didn't have to, I don't think I'm ever going to retire out on golf.
Yeah.
But my first few startups, we did product market fit, not scientifically. It was either luck or we just had gut feelings. Since a lot of losses, I've really learned the importance of product market fit, and now that I know it's a science, I want to apply it in everything I do and all the people I work with.
That's great. Grant, anything else to add to that?
I mean, I would say I've taken a couple of times in my career where I've taken some time off. When I left AT&T, I managed to get about a year off. And then when I, left my last company last year, I took some time off. And I think what I've learned in both those situations is that I'll probably never not work. It is a good experience to have a few months off, especially in the summer. But when those dark days of winter come around, you definitely want to be doing something. I think what the opportunity exists now, though, is to do things that you enjoy doing rather than that you have to do. So I think for me, it just gives you that freedom to spend a little bit more time on what you really are passionate about.
Yeah. Hey, so let's get started with some of the big questions here. And so the one on everybody's mind is, what is product market fit? What are the telltale signs of knowing that you have it? Sid, I'm going to go to you for that one.
Sure. I think and I go back to my days starting companies. which is when I think the product market fit question becomes most existential. When we first started building product, in the early days of Clarabridge, for instance, we had a general idea that we wanted to build something that would tame unstructured data and make it useful to businesses, but we hadn't quite figured out who would give a darn about what we were trying to do, and who would actually see business value and even business ROI in what we did. So for me, the big part of product market fit was testing out potential markets, potential personas, potential sort of people with money to spend or money that they were looking to kind of drive an ROI from, and kind of shape the product so that it sort of conformed to the business requirements of that particular buyer and persona. And what you find early on when you're doing product market fit is that some of those potential buyers have a much tighter kind of resonance to your message and your product. Others have less. And as you figure out the company focus and the buyer focus that matters, you kind of shape your product in such a way that you create a match, right? And that match is a highly resonant, highly value-driven match. That to me is product market fit.
Glen, you're leading several companies at iCore to show them how to get to product market fit. And one of the things that you'd mentioned was you have a rubric. Could you share with me what that rubric is so that people can understand when they actually get there?
So first of all, iCore is a National Science Foundation program funded, and I actually work at it through the University of Maryland, where we work with 11 universities. And product market fit, in terms of the rubric, most products have a huge total, most products that are worth doing have a huge total addressable market. But when the Allies decided that it was time to take over Europe, or take Europe back from the Nazis, they didn't attack at every single point and surrounded them. They picked a beachhead. And so how did they pick the beachhead? What was the rubric they used? Same thing about going after a market. You don't want to go after the total addressable market, too many resources. So you want to develop a rubric that says, is this, are the people that I sell to risk averse because I'm introducing a new company? How risk averse are they? How deep is their pain? Is it a viral market? If I sell to 5 or 6 of them, do they coalesce? Do they talk to each other? Do they go to the same trade shows? Will word of mouth be really effective? Do they have money? Do they have need? So ranking those factors in picking a beachhead are very important, and going after just a narrow niche beachhead to start.
Grant, you talk about process. Thanks for that, Glen. I like knowing what those questions are. You talk about process and getting to product market fit. Talk to me more about what kind of process people should be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love what Glen says about the beachhead, because I think that really comes to the component of when we think about product market fit, it's important to understand that you're not going to be successful without it. But just because you have it doesn't mean to say that you will be successful, right? So you have to not only establish you have product market fit, but you have to understand what that means for you as a business. And so the process of understanding where product market fits into building your business generally, you have to think that distribution, you have to be able to make sure that even if your product market fit, that you're able to make money from it. You have to kind of go back to the underlying concept of why you're building your business, because when you talk about product market fit, you can certainly, subscribe to that just to, can we generate revenue? Can we generate revenue at scale? But that's not what every business and every organization sets out to achieve, right? So product market fit can be measured by revenue, but oftentimes, depending on what the business is trying to do, it might be measured in other ways. So I look at it as, you have to understand what are you trying to do? You have to understand why you're trying to do it. And then once you understand those two components, you can start digging into a little bit more about, who you're serving, how you're serving them. And then if you can, get positive responses to all those questions, then you're getting closer to product market fit.
One of the challenges of, sorry, go ahead, Sid.
Raj, I could just maybe make give a real example that kind of illustrates a lot of what Grant and Glen are saying. So I'm going to go back to some of the early days of my company, Clarabridge. We built this product that could take unstructured data and organize it into topics and sentiment scores and various kind of markers of, the nature of a conversation or the nature of feedback. When we were trying to find our product market fit, we actually, over the first 2 years of the business, actually tried to build out lawyer applications that could analyze legal documents and healthcare applications that could analyze patient medical records. We actually spent some time in the government trying to figure out if it would be useful to people doing intelligence gathering and assessment. And then lastly, we went to corporations that were looking to try to make sense of feedback coming from things like social media and surveys and contact center conversations that were being documented by agents into their service applications. And we learned after doing that the last category, that customer data category, had a kind of a holy trinity of some really high value for product market fit. One is those companies were dealing with exponentially growing data volumes. They couldn't read or analyze the data fast enough. The alternative to a technology solution was market research and insights companies that charged a lot and did work very slowly relative to technology. And then the third and probably most important was we found insights fast enough that if people took action on the insights, they could save money or they could make money. So the ROI was really, really powerful. And we found obstacles to the other use cases. We didn't have clearances for the government. Lawyers love to just charge people for paralegals. And so they didn't have an incentive to buy the technology. And at the time, this is, again, 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago, the healthcare companies hadn't worked out a regulatory regime for privacy and data into cloud applications. So the market kind of spoke to us and said, the fit that we want to focus on is this customer segment of customer data, because it had all the parameters that said, this is where I'm going to be able to make money and meet a business need.
So how did you,
just if I could,
yeah.
One of my clients as an executive coach sells software development tools. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to sell them to everybody, and they were competing against huge companies like Microsoft and Atlassian. And they were selling it to the total addressable market. So we did an analysis on what made them different or better, and we zeroed in on they were more secure than Atlassian. One of all, they could run on-prem. Atlassian can't run on-prem. They could run on-prem or in the cloud. They had better traceability. They had better auditability. What's going on there? So we decided that if they just focused their advertising, marketing efforts, and feature sets to the defense market, both contractors and DoD, they would grow better, faster, and then, which they did, and they doubled. And then we went to adjacent markets that had similar capabilities, financial and pharmaceutical
requirements. Sure.
And that was the way to grow. So the growth accelerated, at an incredible rate.
How do you know you're having the conversations with the right customers? Obviously, you get that feedback, and people are going to want to buy it. But I've seen entrepreneurs get stuck thinking, no, I'm definitely going to sell to this market. And you just keep going after it. And then you think, okay, I'm going to iterate the product because that's what these three guys in that audience wanted. And so I changed my product. So that's a mistake I've made.
Don't talk about product.
Hopefully don't make that.
Where your product fits in the job to be done. What's the job to be done and how do you fit in it? And you don't talk about product. You talk about what are the frustrations in the job to be done, and you don't bias it by giving them any hint about what you're doing.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm presenting at the Product-Led Summit tomorrow, and one of my slides I have is entitled "Everyone Lies." And the concept of that is, and this is the challenge that you have when you're trying to kind of do that level of discovery around, what is it going to sell? Someone said to me one time, everything's, wine and roses until someone has to pay the check. So I see entrepreneurs talking to people, if I had a product that did X, Y, Z, would you buy that? And they say, yes, right? But then when they actually ask them to buy it, they won't, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a very different level of commitment when you actually have to pay money. And really, when we try to define success, it's not 3 or 4 clients. It has to be, can I sell this to 100? Can I sell this to 1,000, depending on the product you're doing? So I think, especially entrepreneurs who tend to be over optimistic, they can feel that they're getting to product market fit because they've managed to get nodding heads in lots of situations. You have to go much further than that. You really only know when you've actually got enough people to consistently buy the same thing and not to customize that every single time.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a hypothesis of who would be the best beachhead and interview in that market first. Get enough interviews where it validates or enough that says it's not. This is science, it's not art. So start with a hypothesis, test the hypothesis. And if you find it's right, great. If not, pivot and start again. The other thing I'd say that's important about interviewing is, numbers. So 4 people telling me I'm on the right thing doesn't tell me anything. And one of the examples I use all the time is Republican counties have the lowest rate of cancer. Republican counties have the highest cancer rates. Why is that? Because they're less dense. They're less populated. They're more rural. And because of that, numbers skew. It's the rule of small numbers. So you need a large number to make your data set, viable. Is it real? Is it realistic?
Yeah, can I pull back on something Grant just said too about repeatability? Yeah. I very much believe in that too. When we were trying to find product market fit for Clarabridge in the early days, there was repeatability in the commercial space. That to me said I can build a product once and sell it 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 times. In the government space, there was not, at least at that time. Every agency had a very kind of proprietary view of what they wanted to do with a technology like ours. They wanted to customize the heck out of it. And I knew that for every hour of work I spent customizing for customer A or client A, I would have to do the same amount in client B. And so my cost of basically goods and services would go up. And frankly, my margin would go down, and my ability to scale my business, building on sales and marketing and other things would also sacrifice. So you want to chase that repeatability in order to drive a healthy business model.
That's a great point.
Another quick way to test that repeatability, and I definitely found this in my last organization, was, just because you as the founder can sell your product, right? That could either mean you've got a great product or you're just a really good salesperson, right? And so a big test of whether you have product market fit is, can you get other people to sell your product for you? Can you bring in a sales team to basically sell your product, right? Can they sell it almost like a widget? If you can get that, extended reach to other people who can go out and sell it as well as you can, you're certainly getting closer. Maybe you have achieved product market fit, but just the founder themselves selling doesn't necessarily mean you're there. That could just be a passionate founder who's very good at selling.
I'm a big believer in, a blueprint, and the best blueprint I've ever seen is the business model canvas, which focuses in on eight specifics, but 3 main areas. So we're really only talking about, does the customer need it? Will the customer buy it? But then we've got to figure out, can I build it? Which is also part of it. And then the third part is, can I build it where it's financially viable? So is there need? Can I do it? And can I do it at a sustainable level?
Glenn, let me ask you a question about something you said a little bit earlier. You said you need to interview people. So who is actually doing the interviews? Is it the CEO? Is it a marketing person? Is it a product team? Is it a product marketer? And how many interviews is enough?
So there aren't enough interviews, and you should never stop interviewing. It depends on the organization, but what the process is more important than the who and the taking notes and the quantifying things. So, if I ask people, how are you doing today? And they say, I'm doing fine. That doesn't take me anywhere. What do you mean fine? If I say, how are you doing today on a scale of 1 to 10, and they say 7, I would say, that's great. Why not? Why don't you say a 5? I can quantify it. When you're doing customer discovery, when you ask somebody about their job, let's say you're talking to a doctor who inserts artificial hips. When you say, what are some of the frustrations you have in your job? And he says, well, it just takes 3 hours for me to do this thing. I need to be able to do it faster. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that to you? That's that question. And then the second one is, importance is only one factor. What's your priority? Because there may be other things in the list that have higher priority. And if I'm making a better hip that can get put in by an hour and a half, and he's got, well, no, that's not my priority to solve the problems I have in my job, I still don't have customer fit.
Sid, I really liked what you were saying about, and I know you got something to add, but I wanted to just maybe interject another thought too. And you said something about your margins going down because you've got to customize your product for one customer, customize it for another customer. Suddenly, all your gross margins go down. And what a lot of people don't understand is when your margins go down, the value of your company goes down with it.
Yes.
And so, like you were able to scale and sell for significant multiples because you didn't have that weight over your head, right? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, no, in fact, actually, your question kind of ties into something I was going to say to follow up for Glenn as well. So I'll kind of bring the two topics together. And that is that product market fit, like an AI model, can have drift, meaning meaning when you've defined your product market fit at a point in time, right now, in a year or 2 or 3 years, the market may drift over here. And if your product is still here, you've got to drift over to the market. You've got to adapt. And one of the ways that happens is your customers, what was easy or maybe what was acceptable at a point in time is no longer acceptable or considered hard. And so you have to make sure your product meets the needs of your drifting market. The other thing that can often happen is the market dynamics can change. And a good example of this is when we first started kind of going to market with the Clarabridge products, we were very much focused on text analytics because at the time, most of the digital conversations and feedback we could bring in were text. Well, starting about 8 years ago, we started to see a lot of digitization of conversations that were audio recorded. They were digital, they were in cloud-based contact center solutions, they were coming in through various digital messaging. And we realized that the market now needed the audio, not just the text. And if we'd stayed focused on text, we would have been riding a mature and kind of consolidating market. We decided to kind of tack over to this new growth market that was adjacent and that was frankly part of now an expanded product market fit. And that allowed us to keep growing. So to keep growing, you have to keep looking for where is the market going, where is it drifting, and if it's still strategic to you, make sure that you're not limiting yourself. You might have to expand or shift the focus to be basically responsive to market changes.
The best example of that in the public markets is what's happened to Blockbuster and Netflix. So when Blockbuster introduced a new product, which was home delivery through the mail, Blockbuster pivoted and did that. But then the market changed because network capabilities and throughput became ubiquitous, and therefore sending it through the mail went to streaming. Netflix adjusted and went to streaming. But then when everybody else started offering streaming services, Netflix realized they needed to become a production company. So they always stayed with the market. They've constantly interviewed and shifted their customer market fit as market needs changed.
That is a really important point too. And I think, Grant, at one point you mentioned, like, I think in our prior discussions, Kodak had the same type of issue where they actually invented the digital camera and shot themselves in the foot.
There's lots of great examples where CFOs have killed businesses by not wanting to give away revenue too early.
Yeah,
not eating their own children.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And look, I think that the thing that I find a lot of time talking to, especially early stage founders, but increasingly more larger scale organizations, is that, look, conceptually, I think a lot of them get these kind of ideas, and there's a lot of people out there thinking that maybe this makes a lot of sense. The challenge is, how do you do this in a fast, dynamically moving environment, right? Things like the iCore program are great for putting things into construct, into templates. And this is, to me, the kind of power of product management, because effective product management has tools and templates, right? We talked earlier on about how a particular feature might evolve from being something that was a nice to have to something that's essential. There are models out there like the Khera model, right? Talk about the difference between delighters, satisfiers, or basic capabilities. Prioritization, right? There's kind of RICE plus techniques out there that you can use, and you can apply these different techniques into how you go about making decisions to prioritize customer requirements versus revenue growth versus margin, right? There are great tools out there, and good product managers will basically introduce your organization to a methodical way to help you, go through these decisions. Because I think too often I find that, even large scale CEOs can make this a little bit gut. They kind of feel their way into it. When actually what that does is, especially is that, and I found this directly, as the organization gets bigger and the dissenting voices get louder, you need to have a mechanism in place that allows you to justify at least some level of scientific analysis you've done into the decision-making process you're taking.
Sid, I'm going to hop over. That's a great point. Sid, moving on to that point, how do you know when it's time to add a new product or add additional features to an existing product? And then how many products is too many products?
Yeah. So this is like the $1 billion question in my mind, because I think being too responsive to too many feature market signals or requests can actually distract you. But being too laser focused on your kind of initial, customer profile, your initial kind of product value proposition can also island you, right, and silo you into a market that becomes sort of a backwater when you want to be focusing on a growing opportunity. For me, at least, I tend to have a very customer-centric kind of perspective, which is if I hear from customers that I know are in my kind of growth sector or my kind of strategic kind of market segment, if I see customers asking for something that I don't have, and I see it more than 2 or 3 times in enterprise software, if it's a consumer play, it's going to be more than like several hundred times, then I actually need to sort of figure out, if I do this, will I either be more efficient, back to the efficiency argument, will it be easier to sell, or will I actually be able to sell more? And if the answer is yes to one or more of those questions, there's a very high likelihood I want to sit down with my product teams and say, how do we add this capability? Now, if it's a capability or feature, it's often easier to just work into an existing roadmap. If it's a product, a brand new product idea, there's obviously a bit more, I think, work that needs to be done, because, again, you run the risk of too many products become too defocusing for a company if you do it too early. So we tended to try to build capabilities to our current products as opposed to try to build brand new products. As you get bigger, I think you can justify doing more product creation. But I would hesitate, again, if you're under 50, a million, 50 or even 100 million, not try to buy too many or build too many products. It can be distracting.
And Raj, I'd say that a lot of this comes down to, again, a lot of the work I do with clients is the why they're there, right? When you talk to especially early stage founders or even medium stage companies, right? Are you there because you're trying to build a lifestyle business? Are you there because you're trying to grow your business really rapidly because you want to get bought or acquired by a strategic partner? Are you there because you think you're going to be bought by private equity? Or maybe you already have private equity in your business. That's going to fundamentally change what your growth objectives are. It's going to, you might have to add products, not because you think the market requires it, because you're trying to grow revenue a particular direction, or you have to try and create more margin in the products you have as well. And fundamentally, that comes down to the why. And this is kind of, I always believe that the why is the North Star for any organization. Because when you're going through these prioritization decisions about new features, new functionality, new products, if you bring it back to the why are you there in the first place, that's more often than not going to help you decide what is the right decision, whether it's growth, whether it's stability, whether it's, maintaining safety, transition. The why is going to be the big factor there.
Glen, you're a startup, you've got some sales, you're starting to make some movement, but you're not scaling fast. What's the first thing that you would do?
I would say, do I have the right am I too widely focused? Do I have the right beachhead? Am I focusing my energy in a narrow space? So 300 Spartans, how did they hold off 10,000 Persians? They focused the battlefield on a very narrow field where numbers didn't count as much. So all of us as startups are competing against something. Nothing worth doing isn't being done. The job is not being accomplished already. So we are replacing something. And that something is likely to be a much larger company. So how do we focus our energy and our resources? It's all beachhead. By the way, one other thing, I wanted to go back to priorities and the importance of priorities. If I ask people about how, should people be working on a cure for COVID 5 years ago, on a priority of 1 to 10, that'd be a 10. And what would the priority be? That would be a 10. Today, it's a non-issue. It's still, there's no cure. Should you be working on a cure? No, because the priority level, because it's become almost a non-issue, is more like a 4 or a 3. So focusing in on not just the need, but the priority to fill that need.
Touching on that, what are the signals that CEOs get wrong?
I think that, the concept of the customer is always right is a misnomer, right? I've always maintained that you take 90% of what your clients tell you and you throw it away because it's going to be distracting. But that remaining 10%, you ignore at your peril. But you have to weed through a lot of misinformation. I think it's the same with your sales team as well. you can't be successful without listening to your customers. You can't be successful without listening to your sales team. But, you know, the only thing worse than not learning a lesson is learning the wrong lesson. And with the amount of data you get coming in, it's very easy to get distracted by the loudest, or very easy to get distracted by the most, you know, the one that you want to hear. And so I think, you know, to me, you know, just taking anecdotal data without going in and looking at broader evidence is a big challenge for early stage companies, particularly.
I know I've fallen into that trap several times, and I know when I built my companies, I'd always make sure that we had enough people asking for a specific feature or a type of product before we even entertained the idea. And then the first question was, would you pay for it? That ties back to your big question that everybody might say, oh yeah, this is cool. This is a nice feature. Oh yeah, I'd love to have it. But then when you say, well, will you take your wallet out and actually pay for it? Not so sure. That's a telltale sign.
Yeah. One thing that always, one thing that always kind of comes to mind whenever I hear about, you know, somebody asking for a new feature is I have to either clearly hear articulated by the person asking for the feature, whether it's a stakeholder inside the company or a customer, if I can clearly understand and have that person articulate the benefit of the feature, right? And the benefit can be, again, a financial benefit, an efficiency benefit, a risk benefit, a transformation benefit that somehow makes the business more competitive. If there's not a clear benefit, if it's just a nice to have, that's always going to be prioritized lower than a feature that has a clearly articulated benefit.
And for me, it's clearly outlining and what is the ecosystem and who are the stakeholders. So the biggest mistake is just speaking to end users who may not be the beneficiary, who may not be the decision maker, the influencer, or the saboteur. So you need to have a wide array of influencer or interviews with all the types of stakeholders, and you need to map out the ecosystem.
I don't want to gloss over that word you just said real fast. You said the word saboteur, and that actually happens. Like, can you share an example, Glenn, of something that you've seen where maybe an internal non-champion, a saboteur, actually kind of derailed the project?
Okay. Selling to a marketing department, a sales and marketing software feature that puts more work and learning on the IT department. The IT department can often be the saboteur. I don't want to bring in something new. I don't want to have to work harder. I don't want to have to integrate. I don't want to have to, it may put my system, I don't want my other systems to suffer because I'm doing this integration. So, you know, IT, if you've got a software product that appeals to a function outside of IT, you've got to talk to IT and find out what it's going to take.
Yeah, I was right.
Yeah, a great question is when you've implemented things like this in the past, how has your company made decisions? And then who was involved? And you've got to interview that part of the.
Got to get all the stakeholders involved. Grant, I have a question for you. Your new startup is about using AI to help you get to product market fit. Can you talk about the ways that AI is changing the way we approach product market fit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, you know, I wrote a blog post a few weeks ago, how Silicon Valley killed product management. And the basic theme of that was that we've, you know, through the rise of Silicon Valley and this kind of tech-enabled founder, we've moved into this kind of technology-focused world where building MVPs, getting product out there as quickly as possible and trying to learn from clients has kind of sort of become the way. And when I kind of tried to figure out why his product, you know, when I worked for AT&T, I told you I kind of ran a $500 million product line. You know, product was king, right? You were in charge of everything. You were the subject matter expert. You owned everything. You understood your P&L. You made decisions for your product. And it seems that we've kind of moved away from that recently. And when I try to understand maybe why that is, you sort of realize, well, product's hard, right? Doing it the right way is hard, right? You know, I talked earlier on about the what and the why, but, you know, understanding who, we talked earlier on about building kind of user personas for who's going to buy your particular product, building user journeys, you know, how are they going to touch it? How are they going to manage it? All that level of documentation that you need to put in place to do this properly. You know, iCore, I think, has a minimum of 100 interviews. That's a lot of work that people have to do, and it's easy to try and scrimp that. And then even when you build all that documentation, then throwing it over the fence to a bunch of engineers to go and build, they're not going to read all that. And so you end up, it's just easier sometimes to go and build this, put an MVP out there and just tinker with it. What AI allows you to do is create that volume of documentation in a much easier way than you've ever done. You can write requirements much simpler. You can build user personas and extrapolate them. You can then generate lots of different user stories. And then even although you create that volume of data now that is way more voluminous than it would be before, you can then extrapolate the requirements in a much easier to digest way for engineers as well. And just keep that linkage, keep that prioritization going. AI is a great tool for taking lots of complex data and basically summarizing it or building out the salient points of it as well. So what we're trying to do right now is basically build a platform that takes the product management process and then uses AI to really try, one of the models I talk about in terms of when you're looking at usability is what we call the reward penalty friction model, right? Why are people using something? Well, there has to be a reward or there has to be a penalty that prevents them from using it. And if there's a significant reward or sufficient penalty, then the only thing preventing them is the friction to allow them to do it, right? And so when you look at, what we're trying to do here, you're trying to reduce the friction. That's the real enabler for the process. So I think there's huge opportunities to basically use AI to significantly improve that process.
Yeah.
Glenn, I want to go to you in just 1 second. I just want to interject a quick housekeeping note. I'm starting to see a couple of comments come in. Please, if you're watching this live, go ahead and ask your comments. I am seeing them, and we're going to share them. Just a quick note. Cheryl Dickinson. Hi, Cheryl. Nice to see you. I'm glad you're online. She mentioned to Grant that your word "everyone lies" is called the do-say bias. How true. And Adam Qureshi just sent a note that yes, bill ASAP, use AI. You don't want to be writing epics these days, which is a really long way to create tools. We've got about another 10 minutes, and I'm still going to ask a few more questions. Glenn, you had a thing to add.
Real quick, even before the interview process or before you starting writing epics, when you're interviewing, it's important to recording it can actually hinder the interview. People may be reserved. So it's great if you can record it and transcribe it. If you can't, two people should do the interview and take exhaustive notes.
Yeah.
But the third thing is, if you have a well-structured interview process, you feed those notes into an AI and say, find me the trends.
I've done market research that way myself in the last couple of years. Well, I wanted to add one thing to Grant's comments about this, being more rapid. Back when my hair was dark, and Grant, you probably had hair, product release cycles were measured in months, not in weeks. Sorry. Just too easy.
The visual here now. Okay.
Agile computing, agile development, and now AI have actually rapidly sped up the ability to design, prototype, and build an MVP. So you measure things in weeks, not months, and certainly months, not years now. And the mantra I've always been kind of preaching the last few years is succeed fast and fail faster, right? So it's important to kind of try to up the cadence for a lot of this work nowadays, because the tools make it so and make it easier to do that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, because there's a couple of comments there that I'm seeing, and I kind of wanted to highlight, because this is exactly the opposite of the point I'm trying to make, which is I don't believe you should be releasing technology until you've really done a lot of the pre-work on this, because I think you learn the wrong lessons. I mentioned the whole concept of clients lie as well. AI is a fantastic tool, but it has limitations, and it's important to understand what it can and what it can't do. And it's, I remember, I'm old enough to remember the 90s where everyone thought the internet was a product, right? And then we got to the early 2010s and everyone thought cloud was a product. AI is a tool, and it's how we use it. It's going to basically benefit us. And I think product has a responsibility to not only leverage it to improve the product development process, but also to look at the ethical use of AI within the tools that people are building. Throwing an AI tool out there today and thinking that you have product market fit is just not going to work. Just because technically you can create something doesn't mean to say that it's actually going to be great in the market. And that's the whole point about putting product first, right? It's about understanding what problem are you solving, not have you just created great tech.
Very, very good points. And I just noticed a couple of comments on the Mindshare LinkedIn feed. I don't know if the feed is actually displaying there. I'm not sure why. It looks like we are live because we're getting comments. So apologize for any technical glitch we might be having. We do have a question here from Eves. He said, thinking of the current Gen AI hype, how do you differentiate between a hype that will come and go and may distract you and a hype that's actually truly transformational, something that's disruptive and can change the market?
So I'll take it. I've read it. So AI is a feature. It's what AI is not important. What AI can do for you is. So it's customer interviews and it's understanding what value AI would give to that customer. But you're not selling AI, you're selling the value prop. So Grant's given a great example of how he can use AI to improve the value of the product that he's producing. And I'm sure he's done that through interviews.
I'm looking forward to the day where we stop throwing the term around AI, because we don't talk about the internet anymore and we don't talk about cloud anymore, right? But back in the day we did. And so we throw AI out and it means so many things to different people, right? We have to understand that there's kind of two AI markets. There's the infrastructure market that's been, the platform infrastructure that's been built out, where LLMs are being built by the Googles, by the Metas, etc. And then there's applications like ChatGPT that are being built on top of those learning models. And there's going to be more applications that are going to be built out of those models as well. So I really encourage people to really, this is math now. People I remember my parents saying to me, right, or me saying to my parents, I'm never going to use calculus, right? Well, AI is calculus, right? If you understand how neural networks work, if you don't, just go and take a basic primer on it, right?
AI is how you do it.
Yeah.
That's not important. It's why it's important to me. Why is it important?
Absolutely.
Now we're talking AI. We all have opinions on AI. I'll give you my 2 cents on it. I think of AI today in sort of 3 broad categories. If you think about current versus sort of future uses of technology and where AI fits. Category 1 is AI basically can be a wrapper on a non-AI product and make it easier. It can summarize, it can recommend, it can predict things based on looking at the data in a current non-AI system, right? The second is AI can be actually a foundational element of a product. It actually does the work. It doesn't summarize the work of something that's non-AI. So for instance, sort of an intelligent coaching application or a digital offer algorithm that basically looks at what you say and decides how to kind of recommend something to you is AI first, and it's not AI wrapped, right? And then the third is, and this is probably one of the more kind of interesting things for me to think about right now, is AI becomes a connector. AI can code, AI can link, AI can automate, right? If you look at the recent announcements from ChatGPT for their operator product, it effectively can replace humans in doing things. It can replicate a human buying things online. It can replicate a human solving a technical problem. And it actually operates independent of a human being consuming the information. It essentially is a true robot. And it can be a programmer or a user or an agentic thing. So I think when we think about AI, it is a feature. I agree with that statement. But how you use it and how much it replaces legacy technology kind of controls how much power and how much novelty there is to it, I think.
Sid, I want to ask you one more question. When do you know it's time to retire a product?
When no one's buying it, to be very blunt. Yeah.
All right. What are the telltale signs? Is it flatlining? Is it you have to wait for a decline? If your revenue's flatline, do you think it's enough to tweak it and then just trying to when do you know?
I mean, honestly, I think of it like a car, right? I mean, when you have a car, if you can patch it up, if you can service it, if it's still got some miles left in it, and you can continue to get value and frankly enjoyment from it, you should keep using it. But at the point at which it becomes more trouble than it's worth, and trouble can be a function of it costs too much to maintain, or it no longer operates reliably, or there are just such better products on the market that you know that you want, or you are now a proxy for the customer that the customer wants. You have to ask yourself if it's better to just move on.
Yeah.
I just say there, Raj, as well, though, it's important to understand the product life cycle, and some of these declining products can actually have great product market fit, right? I mean, X25 as a protocol is still used in some airlines, right? And if you're an expert today on X25, you can make a lot of money, right? So declining products can still make a lot of money. They just are obviously managed in a different way.
Yeah, yeah. And I can tell you another thing that I've experienced from in my businesses is that when you start to see consolidation happening in the industry, you have to make that call. Are you going to stick it out? Are you going to just iterate on your product? Are you going to buy other products? You're going to grow your company? Or do you want to capitalize on the timing and sell your business? I know that's what I've done a couple of times, knowing that consolidation was happening. And I remember back in the late '90s, when I sold my company GovCon, it was a decent sale for us. And I had a friend who'd gotten an $18 million offer on his company. Said, no, we're going to ride this out. 1 year later, his company was worth $1 million. And so timing is pretty important, right? So
There's a great question out there about service. You are not a service company. Your service and how you package it and deliver it to customers is a product, and product market fit and doing interviews and understanding what job you're replacing. There's no, the interviews may be a little different. The people you're talking to are different, but it's still, all these principles apply.
yeah, yeah. So, hey, I've got a rapid fire round of questions for you guys. I'm going to just go around. I will start with Grant. Grant, what is your favorite productivity tool?
Oh, that's a great question at the moment. Well, I mean, ChatGPT right now.
Right now, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I
I'm
actually
using it
like
every day,
Claude
yeah.
better. I find Claude, Sonnet, and Opus to be like, for me. I don't know. What do you think of DeepSeek?
I've not used it.
Anybody else use it?
Haven't been ready to give my data to the Chinese just yet, so we'll see.
Love
Okay,
Claude.
right.
Love Claude.
Yeah. I like Claude too. Sid, what's the best career advice you have ever received?
Pursue your passion and do it with passion. I mean, at the end of the day, anything you do half-ass is really not worth doing.
That's so important. So important. Glenn, what is the biggest work-related regret you have?
I have an issue, which is if things are working well, I either break them so I can fix them because I need excitement in my life. So I left Progress Software and left about 30% of my stock options were probably worth about $3 million on the table because I wasn't having fun. And so being satisfied when you, right now, for instance, with my free time, I'm writing books. So if you're not excited by your job, but you're able to do it and it's still valuable for your income and your family, stick with it. Find some other way to keep yourself excited.
I find that equation changes the older you get because you start to realize we don't have an infinite amount of time, right? So there is that. So Grant, what's the most impactful book you have read?
I'm reading the book right now, which I'm really, really enjoying. Actually, I've just finished it, and it's called How to Win the Premier League, and it's how data changed football. And it's by the stats guy at Liverpool Football Club. And if you've not read it, I'd really encourage you to pick it up because it's not only just interesting because I'm a mad football soccer fan, but it's just amazing how, everything from gambling to the betting markets in China to just how, these people have been able to buy these clubs and just make them super successful through kind of money balling, right? And so not only is it enjoyable, but it's got incredible lessons for business.
Yeah. All right, Sid, what is your, if not tech, what would your career be?
Either a bass player for a punk band or when I was younger, I would say a politician, though at this point I'm kind of turned off by politics. So
I would join you in that band, by the way. You can see my drum set in the back. I used to be in a Bollywood band and I loved those days. I have a question for all of you as we close this out, and just hang with me for 1 minute. I just want to give a quick plug about Mindshare. So Mindshare is the organization that hosted this event. And again, I apologize to those of you who had a little technical glitch. We'll figure it out. We'll get it right the next time. But this will be recorded and available to people to watch. If you are a DC, Washington, DC area product company, and you are the founder or CEO, and you're interested in scaling your business fast, I encourage you to apply to Mindshare. We do accept applications. It is by invite only, so you'd need to connect with one of the members. All 4 of us are members of Mindshare. You can reach out to me through LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. We're accepting applications for about 1 more week for the 2025 cohort. The members are the who's who of technology. These are people that you do want to network with. It is by far, and I don't know if you guys would agree with me, it is the best networking around town. So that's been my experience. So I encourage you to join and look for other future events coming up. So as we close it out, the biggest question is, what's your why? I'll start with Glenn.
My why is to keep my family proud, to not do anything that I'm embarrassed about, and have fun.
Sid?
That's a good one. My why is to always be learning and to have no regrets.
Very
That
good.
isn't to say
Very
I don't
good.
sometimes have regrets. I have no regrets.
We all can share that sentiment. Grant, what's your why?
I think to maintain balance. I think that's something that I think maybe in my early career I wasn't very good at, and I think I try to do a much better job as much as possible today. We only get so many days on this place, and so trying to make sure that you spend the right balance between work, family, sport. So my objective all the time is just to try and maintain the right balance.
I think that's great, and I'm with you guys. I love what I do. I can't quit either. I remember when I sold one of my companies, and I had an 8-month consulting agreement, and after the first 3 or 4 months, there was nothing to do, and I got bored out of my mind, and so I really needed to like start picking up and doing something. So my why is also like making my family proud of what I'm doing, and kind of making whatever dent I can in the world. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining. And again, for anybody who might be interested in joining Mindshare, reach out and we'll help guide that conversation for you. And I look forward to seeing you on a future panel. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
Bye, everybody.
Sure.